With training camp right around the corner, the Philadelphia Eagles are getting some insane rumors, as they've recently been linked to a couple different players, one of which is a disgruntled superstar. So, could Philly surprise everybody and pull off a blockbuster trade to land him, or could they make the unexpected move to sign one of these other guys? Well, in this video, I'll talk about that. Plus, there is still one move that I think the Eagles just absolutely need to make, that being to extend Reed Blankenship, and we actually just got an update on what that could look like. So, again, I'm going to talk about all that and more starting right now. We are currently about 3 weeks out from the start of Eagles training camp, where of course we are going to get a ton of exciting stories, news, highlights, and so much more as the Super Bowl champions ramp up for the start of the new season. So, first off, make sure you guys subscribe and you turn on notifications so you don't miss any coverage on that. But as of right now, in the dead of summer, the news has definitely slowed down significantly, so it's become pretty clear that the media is really itching for things to talk about. And look, as a content creator, I get it. I mean, we still gotta find a way to put things out even when there's not much going on. However, the latest big Eagles rumor to come out, I think, is taking it a little bit too far, as ever since the Pittsburgh Steelers traded away Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, there has been a ton of speculation that their next move could be to trade superstar edge rusher TJ Watt. And a lot of people have suggested that none other than the Philadelphia Eagles could be a potential landing spot for him. And the main rumor that's been out there comes from Pittsburgh radio host Andrew Filipponi, and of course, none other than the hosts of WIP Radio in Philadelphia. That being that the Eagles could land Watt by trading the younger up-and-coming pass rusher Nolan Smith.
But maybe there would be players involved. Like, if the Eagles called up the Steelers and said, we want T.J. Watt, we'll trade you Nolan Smith in a late-round pick, I think they'd make that trade.
He thought that Nolan Smith and a late-round pick would get you T.J. Watt. Look, T.J. Watt is awesome. Ike went through the stats the other day. It's crazy. You look at T.J. Watt's stats and Myles Garrett's stats, they're like the same.
I think I would do it. I would do it.
And I would pay him.
And I would pay him.
Wow.
I would do it. I am high on Nolan Smith, and it would definitely sting to give up on a talent like that, and I do think he's good for their locker room. I mean, TJ Watt is way better than Nolan Smith.
Like Nolan Smith and a late round draft pick for TJ Watt. Hugh, the more I have to do it if I'm the Eagles. If it is out there, I have to.
Now look, I do understand why these TJ Watt trade rumors have come up in recent days. I mean, this is a guy who is currently seeking a new huge contract extension. He held out of Pittsburgh's mandatory minicamp early last month, so combine that with the fact that the Steelers just traded for and are now paying a 30-year-old Jalen Ramsey $26 million a year, and having given him a pay raise while also having not paid Watt yet, and that seems like a recipe for disaster. However, I honestly think that the idea that the Eagles could somehow trade for Watt, let alone trade their young rising star edge rusher in Nolan Smith for him, is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, for one, the Eagles likely just simply can't afford it, as Watt is set to be paid around $40 million a year on his new deal, which is about the same amount of money that the Eagles are going to have to pay to Jalen Carter next offseason. And that's not even mentioning the fact that the Eagles have other big extensions to hand out soon and a bunch of big contracts already on the books. So to pay Watt that kind of money likely wouldn't be possible, nor would it make any sense when you already got a guy in Nolan Smith who is much cheaper, he's 6 years younger, and he is clearly on the path to becoming a bona fide star at the edge rusher position. So again, to trade him for TJ Watt, I just think makes absolutely no sense. And combine that with recent reports saying that the Steelers have no intention of trading him anyway, and yeah, I'd say it's pretty safe to say that TJ Watt is not coming to Philadelphia. However, just because that move is unrealistic, that doesn't mean that there aren't other much more realistic moves out there that the Eagles could make, and I actually stumbled upon a rather interesting one recently that would land a former Birds defender back in Philadelphia. And that is none other than linebacker Kyzir White, who, of course, spent the 2022 season in Philly, and he was a solid player for the Birds defense that year and helped them on their path to Super Bowl 57. So now that he's a free agent again, some people have suggested that a Kyzir White reunion in Philly wouldn't be such a bad idea. And that includes writer Anthony Miller of Inside the Eagles, as in a recent article, he made the argument that the Eagles should consider bringing in White, citing potential depth concerns at linebacker due to some injuries at the position, those being, of course, to Nakobe Dean and Jahad Campbell, while also saying that White would be a cheap addition that already has a bit of chemistry with some of the defense. Now look, if the Eagles did want to bring in a cheap veteran option at linebacker to just add depth or maybe even start to begin the season, then you could definitely make the case that bringing back Kyzir White would make sense. I mean, for one, White is a really good tackler who has been rather productive in recent years. I mean, just last year, he put up 137 tackles for AZ's defense, and the 3 years prior to that, he put up 90, 110, and 144 tackles respectively. So, again, if there's one thing that we know about White, it's that he's just a very good tackler who has a nose for the ball carrier. And to go along with that, White has proven to be a very solid run defender and was also a captain for the Cardinals the past 2 seasons, so he would bring some leadership to a very young linebacker room as well. Now that said, there is also a reason why White is still available this late into the offseason, that likely being that he just isn't very good in pass coverage, and on the contrary, he's actually been pretty awful, as in 2024, White posted a pass coverage grade of just 32.0, which ranked 174th out of 189 qualified linebackers. So, there's definitely both positives and negatives if the Eagles were to sign White. Personally, I really do like the young core that the Birds have at linebacker with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and Smile Munden, so I don't necessarily think that they need to sign him, but if they get into training camp and they don't like what they see from either one of those guys and they feel like they need to add a veteran, or they just want to bring in somebody that can be a leader, add depth, and play special teams, then again, I do think Kyzir White could make some sense. So, it's not really a move that I think they need to make. It's not one that would move the needle either, but, again, there are reasons that it would make sense. This next move, though, is one that I think the Birds just absolutely do need to make, and if you've been following my channel over the past several months, then you probably already know what I'm about to say, but I just can't stay silent on this topic because I truly do believe that the Eagles need to find a way to extend safety Reed Blankenship as early as possible, assuming it is financially feasible. And on that topic, we actually did just get some new information regarding what a potential Blankenship extension might look like, as writer Kevin Knight of Bleeding Green Nation outlined that in a recent article. First saying that Blankenship is worthy of premier safety money on the level of somebody like Panthers' Trayvon Moehrig, who just signed a deal for $17 million annually, but Reed may not get that because he just doesn't have the name value around the league, and instead, he thinks Blankenship could get something more on the level of guys like Javon Holland and Cam Bynum, who both got about $15 million a year. And that is in fact the official projection that he gave, as he predicted that Reed could earn a 3-year, $45 million extension for $15 million APY, which would make him the 10th highest paid safety in the NFL, while also getting $22.5 million being guaranteed, and he'd also get a $10 million signing bonus as well. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about those numbers. I mean, are they too high? Do you think they're too low, or just right? Just let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Now, me personally, I'm not quite sure. I mean, on one hand, I could definitely see Reed getting $15 million a year, but I also just don't know how he's viewed around the league compared to some of the other top safeties that are getting paid, so I could also see him getting less than that. Either way, though, I do think the most important thing is just that the Eagles find a way to get a deal done as early and as cheap as possible, and Knight seems to agree with that. As later in the article, he wrote, quote, "I think the Eagles would be wise to get this deal done with Blankenship as soon as possible. The NFL has shown a willingness to finally start paying safeties a bit more, and Blankenship could easily rocket himself into the $20 million annual range if he turns in a career year in 2025. Given Philadelphia's lack of proven safety talent behind him, building this room around Blankenship long-term makes a ton of sense. So, again, I definitely think he makes a great point saying that it's going to be crucial for the Eagles to extend Blankenship ASAP so that his price tag doesn't go up. And again, I just really like Reed and his skill set as a player, whether it's tackling, run support, pass coverage, interceptions, communication, leadership, he does it all. And he's only 26 years old, so it's going to be important to get him wrapped up for the long term. So personally, my hope is that the Eagles can get a deal done sometime before or during training camp, but I'm curious to know what you guys think is going to happen. Moving on, though, this isn't the last of the suggested moves I've seen thrown out there for the Eagles recently, as ESPN's Aaron Schatz actually just put out an article where he proposed one final move for all 32 NFL teams, and for the Eagles, he suggested that they should sign free agent wide receiver Tyler Boyd, with his reasoning being, quote, "One thing the Eagles could use is more depth at the wide receiver position, particularly a slot receiver who can open underneath and convert third downs. Keenan Allen would fit, but we have him going to the Dolphins, so how about Boyd? Boyd had just 39 catches for 390 yards with Tennessee last season, but he was an important part of the Bengals offense from 2016 to 2023. Jahan Dotson feels like he's in a better position to be productive in his second season in the Eagles offense, but Boyd would provide a strong backup in case Dotson's not. Now, personally, I don't dislike Tyler Boyd, and very similarly to Kyzir White at linebacker, if the Eagles wanted to bring in a veteran to add some depth at receiver, then Boyd could make some sense for the cheap. I mean, let's face it, the Eagles' receiver depth behind A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jahan Dotson isn't great, so again, Boyd could provide some valuable depth there. However, it's also important to note that at 30 years old, Boyd is clearly on the downside of his career, and I think Dotson is easily the better option at the wide receiver 3 position. So again, as a cheap veteran depth addition, I wouldn't mind it, but it's definitely not something that I think the Eagles necessarily need to do, nor would it get me too fired up. What does get me fired up, though, is that the Eagles are finally set to receive their Super Bowl rings on July 18th, just before the start of training camp. So that'll be really cool to see. Personally, I want to be on vacation at that time, so I don't think I'm going to be putting out videos, but I still just can't wait to see the designs and the guys getting together to celebrate as a team one more time before the new season begins. And speaking of the Super Bowl winning team, former Eagle and current Arizona Cardinal Josh Sweat actually just made it onto the NFL Top 100 list for the first time in his career, coming in at number 95. So shout out and congrats to him. It's very well deserved. As for the rest of the list, not much is out yet and no current Eagles have made it on, but when they do, I'll be sure to cover it, so stay tuned for that. And overall, if you don't want to miss any Eagles coverage coming throughout training camp or, of course, the start of the 2025 regular season, then make sure you guys subscribe and you turn on notifications. Again, I'm going to be going on vacation starting on about July 12th, going through the 20th, so I probably won't have really anything coming out during that time. But aside from that, I'm going to be having Eagles videos and coverage coming out at all other times, every single week, multiple times a week. So again, make sure you guys subscribe and you turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. And also leave a like down below to show some support because it really does help me out a ton. See if we can get to at least 500 likes on today's video. And also leave a comment down below. Do you think the Eagles could make any of these moves that I mentioned in this video? Again, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.